Heldigvis har Rema 1000 nyheten blomkålris fra ferdig preppasering til kun 20 kroner. Rema 1000, bare ladepriser.
Good grammar and spelling are important, but if you want to write essays that inspire, messages that forge brighter connections.
February 2007, a coin was unearthed bearing a portrait of Cleopatra, which appears to confirm that the queen was actually rather ordinary looking. The fact that ancient historians didn't say much about her looks also suggests she was no Elizabeth Taylor, but the more important point is that it really doesn't matter. Life of Antony, written by Plutarch in 75 AD, made the following observation about Cleopatra. Her actual beauty was not so remarkable that none could be compared with her, or that no one could see her without being struck by it, but the contact of her presence was irresistible. The character that attended all she said or did was something bewitching. Turns out, Cleopatra wasn't just a shrewd and charming diplomat, she was also a student of mathematics, medicine, alchemy, economics, history, geography, and pretty much every general education subject you probably detested in college. Oh, and she spoke 9 languages, so feel free to bring that up to your snobby hipster friend next time they try to order from your favorite sushi spot in Japanese. Twisted Sister. In Egypt, it was customary for pharaohs to rule in pairs. Every regent needed a co-regent of the opposite gender. According to Live Science, Cleopatra ruled with her father Ptolemy XII for a short time until his demise in 51 BC. In his will, Ptolemy XII decreed that Cleopatra should marry her 11-year-old brother, which was probably only a ceremonial thing. Either way, the two were clearly not fond of each other, and the relationship ended with Ptolemy XIII trying to wrest control of the throne, and his sister appealing to Julius Caesar for help reining him in.
If you ally with my sister, I will kill every last Roman in Alexandria.
Enough of the big words, little brother.
Caesar and Cleopatra famously became lovers, and Ptolemy XIII was never happy with Caesar's decision that he should rule with his sister. Eventually, Caesar defeated Ptolemy at the Battle of the Nile, and Ptolemy drowned in the river while trying to escape, so Cleopatra was really only partially responsible for sending her brother to a watery grave.
But wait! There's more!
Because of the whole must-have-a co-regent thing, Cleopatra had to marry her other brother, who later died under mysterious circumstances. In other words, Cleopatra had him poisoned. Then she ordered the execution of her sister Arsinoe, who took Ptolemy's side during the family feud, and at one point declared herself queen. In conclusion, Game of Thrones is plagiarized from Cleopatra's diary. Ascent to greatness. We've already established that Cleopatra was interested in alchemy, but she also understood a bit of actual chemistry. She believed in the power of fragrance not just as a cosmetic, but also as a tool of persuasion. According to Perfume Power, Cleopatra doused her ship's sails with perfume before sailing to her first rendezvous with Mark Antony to make sure that he smelled her before he saw her. She also owned a perfume factory, which sort of seems like an odd side job for a queen, but if you just can't find the sort of mind control fragrances you need at the Macy's perfume counter, there's probably some value in just having it done at your own factory. The ruins of Cleopatra's perfume factory are located near the Dead Sea, and there's evidence that it also operated as a sort of day spa. Some seating remains, which is reminiscent of the chairs you might sit in to have your nails done, or if you, too, wanted to be doused with mind control fragrances. Born this way. Many ancient rulers saw themselves as divine, even godlike. For Cleopatra, the whole ruler as divine thing was part ego, part public relations genius.
It's your universe, and you are God. I am God.
According to scholar Elizabeth A. McCabe, Cleopatra called herself the new Isis, telling her subjects she was the embodiment of Isis on Earth, or the reincarnation of the goddess. Not to be left out, Mark Antony also claimed to be the embodiment of Osiris on Earth. Remember the whole Isis marries her brother Osiris thing? There you go. Now, that's not to say that Cleopatra was very dedicated to the whole Isis thing. Prior to that, she was known to play whichever goddess happened to suit her. When she sailed to that first meeting with Mark Antony on her perfumed barge, she was dressed as the goddess Venus and was waited on by young boys dressed as cupids and maids dressed as sea nymphs. Antony was enamored, to say the least, because who doesn't get all hot and bothered when their crush shows up for a first date on a perfumed barge dressed as a deity? Reality bites. One of Cleopatra's most enduring legends has not to do with her life, but her untimely passing. According to the story, when Cleopatra learned her forces had been defeated by Octavian Augustus, who would become the first emperor of Rome, she killed herself by holding a venomous snake to her breast. Because historians like to debate things, no one really definitively accepts this account of Cleopatra's death. For a start, the story indicates that it took only a few minutes for her to die. But the venom of that particular kind of Egyptian snake actually takes a few hours to work, and is even occasionally survivable. According to the Smithsonian, most historians do agree Cleopatra's death was self-inflicted, but the method isn't clear. It's possible she simply drank a bunch of poison, but that story just isn't as dramatic, which is probably why today most people still think it was a snake. Got milk? Like pretty much every human being, Cleopatra had an innate desire to avoid getting older.
Lines, wrinkles, and those little sunken places? Not anymore.
Unfortunately, plastic surgeons were in short supply in 1st century BC Egypt, and Botox wouldn't be invented for another couple millennia, so Cleopatra had to get creative. According to legend, Cleopatra's daily bath required a tub and 700 lactating donkeys. You heard that right. According to the Vintage News, all over the ancient world, women used donkey milk to keep their skin pale and to keep wrinkles at bay. Emperor Nero's wife was said to travel with whole troops of she-asses, so she'd never have to miss her daily donkey milk bath. And today, scientists know donkey milk has a lot of important health benefits. It can be used as a cow milk substitute for people with allergies. And yes, it's also used in modern beauty products, just in case you don't think you'll be able to procure yourself 700 donkeys and enough servants to milk them every day. A woman scorned. Throughout much of ancient history, women with cheating husbands were just expected to smile happily and pretend like they weren't feeling totally humiliated. So imagine what Julius Caesar's wife Calpurnia must have thought when her husband erected a gilded statue of Cleopatra in the temple of Venus Genetrix, right next to the statue of the goddess herself. This was obnoxious on a number of levels, not just because Caesar seemed completely indifferent to how a very public statue of his mistress would make his wife feel, but also because the Romans didn't believe their rulers were particularly divine the way the Egyptians did. However scandalized the Roman people were by the statue, it remained in the temple for at least 200 years, so it's possible the statue had at least some religious significance. Probably because of Cleopatra's association with the goddess Isis, who had her own minor cult following in Rome. Invasion of the husband snatchers. Mark Antony might not have his priorities in check. Why? Well, he skipped an entire invasion so he could spend the winter with Cleopatra in her Alexandrian palace. That's why. According to HistoryNet, in 41 BC, Antony assembled an army and went east, summoning client kings in hopes of gathering resources for a Parthian invasion. One of those client kings was 28-year-old Cleopatra, who said something to the effect of, "Let's make love, not war." And then Antony said something to the effect of, "The invasion can wait," and followed her back to Alexandria, leaving his army in the hands of his governor. To make a long story short, the Parthians soon crossed the Euphrates River, and everything, pardon our French, went to hell. Meanwhile, Antony's wife Fulvia had to flee Rome after getting her butt kicked by Julius Caesar's heir Octavian. It's hard to say which is worse, being attacked by your husband's political rival while he's off cheating on you with his Egyptian queen mistress, or keeping your mouth shut while your husband erects a gilded statue of his Egyptian queen mistress. If Fulvia and Calpurnia had formed a scorned wives club, Roman history would have been a great CW series. Thanks for watching. Click the grunge icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.
"15 Things You Didn't Know About Cleopatra." Welcome to alux.com, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. Hello Aluxers, and welcome to another exciting original video presented to you by alux.com. Today we'll dig into the life of one of the most remarkable women in history, Cleopatra. She was born around 69 BC, and even nowadays, women still aspire to be like her. She's remembered in the collective culture as being an incredibly beautiful woman that would use her charm to influence some of the most powerful men in the Western world. Her full title is actually Cleopatra, the Seventh Philopator, meaning that there were 6 other Cleopatras before her, but the name was without a doubt made famous by only one. Her reign brought Egypt nearly 22 years of prosperity and stability. She's remembered as one of the most brilliant and alluring figures of antiquity, yet many of the details of her life remain unknown or surrounded by myth. This is because most of the art and writings about her come long after her death and were often written by the Romans, who feared her and the thought of a woman gaining so much power. What do we know about Cleopatra, and what made this woman to be remembered even after all these centuries? There are numerous works of art depicting her life, from paintings to writings and movies, but what do we actually know about her? If you're new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at Alux. Let's dive in to the 15 things you didn't know about Cleopatra. Number 1. She was the product of incest. Marrying a relative was very common practice back in ancient Egypt, especially among royal families, in order to preserve the royal blood and the family's fortune. It's believed that her parents were most likely brother and sister. Number 2. She was the last pharaoh of Egypt. Cleopatra was the last independent pharaoh of Egypt and the last member of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Macedonian Greek family that ruled over Egypt after Alexander the Great's conquest of the land. She started ruling at the age of 18 alongside her 10-year-old brother, whom she married, but she eventually became a sole ruler. After her death, Rome took over Egypt and was later known as Aegyptus. Number 3. Her famous eye makeup had another purpose. The black cat-eye ring around the eye is by far one of Cleopatra's most well-known trademarks. Many believe it was intended to make her more attractive and to intimidate other women, but it actually had a medical purpose. Back in the ancient times, Egyptians faced a variety of illnesses, including eye infections. The ancient cosmetic used for darkening the eyes, called kohl, was thought to contain properties that fought eye maladies. Number 4. The month of August is dedicated to her. After the death of Julius Caesar, Octavian, later known as Augustus, led a campaign against Cleopatra and her reign. His purpose was to take over Egypt and its riches. In the last battle they had, Cleopatra failed to defend her land and was defeated by Augustus. After the victory, Octavian was given the chance to name a month in the calendar. Instead of choosing September, which is the month he was born in, he chose the 8th month of the year and named it after himself to establish a yearly reminder of the fall of Cleopatra's empire. Number 5. Cleopatra the movie was one of the most expensive films ever to be created. There were a lot of movies based on Cleopatra's life, but the most famous one was created in 1963 with Elizabeth Taylor playing the lead role. The production started with a budget of $2 million, but because of production issues, it ended up costing around $44 million, being one of the most expensive movies to ever be created. Number 6. She had a drinking club. Cleopatra and Mark Antony began a drinking club called Inimitable Livers and threw parties for its members. The group also engaged in elaborate games and contests, besides nightly feasts and parties. After being Julius Caesar's mistress for a while, Cleopatra started a love affair with Mark Antony, with whom she had 3 children. Their relationship was mainly strategic, but they also enjoyed each other's company. Cleopatra needed Antony in order to protect her crown, while he needed access to Egypt's resources. They threw grandiose parties and often dressed as gods to impress the people. Number 7. Her beauty was a myth. Cleopatra is known to have been a very beautiful woman, but it all might just be a myth. What we know for sure is we don't actually know what she looked like. Many praise Cleopatra's beauty and blame her for the fall of Julius Caesar and Mark Antony into her beauty trap, but historians such as Plutarch claim that her beauty was not out of the ordinary. What she had was a lot of charm and great intelligence. Some even say she was rather ugly. The out-of-this-world beauty image that was painted by the Romans in order to justify their leader's fall, maybe not wanting to accept that a woman could take over so much power using her strategic skills. One reason we do not actually know what she looked like is because, as I said at the beginning of this video, all of the descriptive artwork regarding her appearance were created long after her death. The surviving statues from her period differ from one to another. What we know for sure is that she knew how to make an entrance and how to present herself in different ways, coming across in accordance with her political and strategic needs. When meeting with someone important or a potential ally, she wore rich clothes and depicted herself as a goddess. However, coins surviving from her period show her with manly features and a large hooked nose. Some believe she intentionally illustrated herself as masculine in order to display strength. Number 8. She had a mysterious death. One of the greatest mysteries surrounding Cleopatra is related to her death. While Octavian Augustus took over Egypt around 30 BC, Mark Antony and Cleopatra allegedly killed themselves. One of the most common theories is that Cleopatra committed suicide by means of an asp bite because she didn't want to fall into Augustus's hands. Another theory is that she killed herself using a poisonous needle kept in her hair. Historians often argue that she was actually captured by Augustus and was either killed by him or captured, but she managed to kill herself while being a prisoner. She died at the age of 39. Number 9. She was a writer. Yes, Cleopatra was an intellectual. She wrote a book named Cosmetics, and no, it's not what you think. It's not a beauty catalog depicting ways to put on makeup. It was actually a very detailed pharmaceutical book that showed medical remedies for health problems that could affect physical appearance. She detailed remedies for hair loss and dandruff, for example. Number 10. She had a perfume factory. Oils and perfumes were used by everyday Egyptians during Cleopatra's time, especially for sun protection and to prevent the bad smell of a sweaty body. Allegedly, our girl owned an entire perfume and cosmetics factory near the Dead Sea, bequeathed to her by Mark Antony. Do you want to know what the most expensive perfume in the world is at the moment? Check out our dedicated video on the topic by clicking in the top right corner. Number 11. She won a bet against Mark Antony. There's a story going around that shows Cleopatra's intelligence and great wit. At one of the frequent feasts she threw, Antony bet her that she couldn't spend a fortune on one meal. To prove him wrong, she threw a very expensive set of pearls in a cocktail. The pearls dissolved because the cocktail contained vinegar. Everybody present was amazed by her knowledge and audacity. Science shows that pearls and vinegar don't work well together. Number 12. She was a polyglot. Cleopatra was a very smart and well-educated woman, knowing up to 8 foreign languages, and how could she not? She was raised and educated in Alexandria, having a huge library to her disposal and some of the best tutors in the empire. She enjoyed intellectual talks and had knowledge in fields like philosophy, astronomy, and mathematics. She was described as a ruler who elevated the ranks of scholars and enjoyed their company. Number 13. She was a fashion designer. Well, sort of. She didn't make the clothes herself, but she pledged for integrating some Greek-style elements into Egyptian looks. It was a strategic move made in order to bring the two countries closer together. Number 14. She was brave. Cleopatra led armies when she was 21 and inspired her soldiers to fight fearlessly. She led her own fleet and got involved in developing the strategies and tactics for the battles. We don't know if she was a general, but she definitely was not afraid to be in the heart of the battle. Number 15. She was said to be the reincarnation of Isis. Cleopatra knew how to make an entrance and how to woo her audience. She often dressed up as a goddess and presented herself as the reincarnation of the goddess Isis. This way, she believed she could convince her potential allies that they were speaking to an actual goddess, making her a valuable asset and demanding respect. She was a smart strategist and used every method to win a negotiation and maintain her crown. To help preserve the belief, she had portraits and sculptures made to reflect her as the goddess. And that's a wrap on the 15 things you didn't know about Cleopatra. She was surely an interesting figure back in her time, and all this mystery surrounding her life makes Cleopatra even more desirable and makes us look her up even centuries later. Hey Luxers, we're curious. What do you think about Cleopatra's luxurious lifestyle and all the parties she threw? Let us know in the comments. Still here, are you? That's because you're a true A-Luxer, and of course, we have one final bonus fact to share with you for sticking around until the end. Number 16. Cleopatra used to bathe in milk to keep her skin young and beautiful. Donkey milk, to be more precise. It is said that she had around 700 donkeys kept just for her daily milk baths. Donkey milk is extremely healthy and has numerous benefits. It leaves the skin feeling soft and clean, and it exfoliates it. It's also very expensive, around $450 a liter. Talk about beauty hacks! Thank you for spending some time with us, A-Luxers. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss another video. We also handpicked these videos, which we recommend you watch next. Thank you for being an A-Luxer, and we'll see you back tomorrow.
Ja. Det var det. God morgon. Du vaknar. Her maling, jeg skal kose med maling, jeg skal bygge et eller maling, det jo kose med, faen der maler, jobber som maler, sånt, og så, nå må vi plutselig, vi kan ikke være så jævla nøye på den malingen til forte, men det, bare de måtte rydde vaske, eller så kom pleier opp, så skulle jeg hjelpe med å rydde vaske. Hvis ikke rydde vaske der, for vi hadde en standard, jeg hadde visst det. Skulle vi se, så rent og rydde. Jeg visste ikke. Jeg visste ikke om folk med i frem. Det var for å vaske tørret. Det var ikke noe det målet som jeg klarer fint. Det kan stå fort å gjøre meg ferdig med malingen. Jeg tror ikke de kommer til å se. Jeg tror ikke. Jeg tror ikke. Så jævlig til å ha. Cleopatra. Ikke noe Cleopatra fikk. Jeg skal barbere meg der, vekk det der, den skjegget. Jeg skal gå inn med jeg bruker et speil. Stå på gulvet og bære seg en jævla dritt. Det er jævlig tungt å stå og bære som folk. Det er jævlig tungt. Så kan man merke det er tungt å stå på gulvet og bære seg. Ting. Jeg håpte det ville ligge vekter på det. Gulv for ting. Det er alt som vil og sånn. Ja, for det siste. Ikke for små, men jeg pleier ikke å høre på. Anything. Actually, it's annoying. Det står 15 millioner fra Storbritannia og reiser og kjøpte horer og penger. Jeg vet ikke. Helt utrolig. tror det, du ska göra någonting för Gud. Jag tror att det får det är så helt jag gör någonting för Gud. Det är någonting häst i Gud. Nej, okej. Det är mig. Om jag får se en kul och lite om. Ska jag inte göra. Jag ska visa. Ta en dusch. Och frukost. Ja, det är frukost. Det är så enkelt att få frukost. Jag fick lunchmat idag. Jag fick mat igår. Helvete, det gick inte så jävligt. Det var helt idiot. Vad klickade på det? Nej. Mat, det var mat som jävligt mat. Man klagade så jävligt, klagade. Och det var 50 fuglar, det var helt alla som mat i chatten bara farligt här. Helt otroligt. Jag får leva med det. var så jävla kul, det var så jävla vettigt, det var helt jävligt. Det var dödskul. Det var dödskul att höra på. Nu fick lite mat. Mat liv. Och smakade gott. Och kaffe.